you ever stop at these roadside markers? One day I pulled in to check out the one that's just a couple miles from me. I've gone past it a few times, and I discovered this town and some history I didn't know anything about. This is William Wren, and the town's name is Renville, named after him. Actually, it wasn't named after him. He named it because he owned it. He owned a coal company. He was really a freighter, but he discovered he could make money hauling coal by train and established this little town and opened a coal mine. There wasn't anything unusual about that. All the coal companies owned these towns. They started them, they built houses and invited people to work for them. What made Renville different is Mr. Wren hired immigrants, Irish, Scottish, Welsh, and Hungarian, who didn't speak English and therefore were considered subhuman. Half of them turned around and left when they saw the work and the working conditions. So then he imported some African Americans from nearby West Virginia, and they all lived in the same town. They worked in the mines together, and they lived in community together, and that was very unusual. None of them would have been allowed to live in the town of Corning, the coal mining town 2 miles south of them. Now, the Corning miners were afraid that the Renville miners would bring down their wages because they worked cheap. That's exactly why they were brought there. Different mines, but still, they marched on Renville soon after it was founded and tried to run people off. But the National Guard was called, and the Corning people stood down and went home. Both these towns were pretty rough places. Renville had 19 saloons. There was one for every 25 residents, 70% of which were male. Go down the street. It's not very big because most of it was taken by the highway. See if this, there's really not much of anything left. This is where the art studio thing is. Cool. Apparently it's not open today. Isn't today Saturday? Oh, there's one of those jugs. I didn't know they had one here.
Oh, that's cool.
They're scattered all over this state. They're sort of a Zanesville thing, I thought. Oh,
What's that?
looks like that's the end of the road. Yeah, that's pretty much all that's left. With 36 last census residents, it makes it Ohio's smallest incorporated town. Let's meet some of Renville's famous citizens. Dr. Isaiah Tuppins. He had been a barber that put himself through medical school when he became the first black graduate of Ohio Medical College. But he moved to Renville in 1884, so that was like 5 years after it was founded. And he was the mine physician as well as the community doctor. Most notable, though, was that he was the first black mayor of Renville and the first black mayor of Ohio. The next memorable citizen is Richard Davis. Davis had been born a slave, and he worked as tobacco at the age of 8. He was in coal mines as a teenager, and then he moved to Renville in 82. He worked there as a check weighman. Now, check weighmans were there to double check. They would work for the workers, and they double check to make sure the company wasn't cheating the workers. He was ended up being a founding member of the United Mine Workers Union, and he was an organizer for black miners in West Virginia and all points south. A black mine organizer. Imagine how dangerous that was. But that's not what killed him. He died of pneumonia in 1999 at the age of 35. As I said, these were pretty rough towns with lots of saloons, but it had 2 churches. 6 years of debauchery were followed by a spiritual awakening and a religious revival in this community. The mines were cutting back and wages had been cut and there wasn't so much work, and people just turned to heaven and to religion in such a high pitch that these churches were open 24/7. And among the revelers was Adam Clayton Powell Sr., who was converted in this particular church in Renville. He later became a minister and the founder of the Obsidian Baptist Church in Harlem, New York, where it had like 10,000 members. It was huge and very famous. His son, of course, was Adam Clayton Powell Jr., who was one of the first black members of the House of Representatives from New York, and he represented Harlem. So the mines were closing or paying horrible wages. There was this religious fervor. The bars were closed. They went in and sort of smashed things. So there were only a couple bars, and then all the businesses closed because there was no money. And then on top of that, there was a nationwide depression. The people of Renville were so bad off that the mayor and the local shopkeeper actually, appealed to the president, who at the time was McKinley, for help, and he sent railroad cars full of food and supplies for the people of Renville. The same town that at one point could afford that large school building, that's what happened to it. It went to ruins. And by the time of the big fire of 1901, when a lot of Main Street was destroyed, the town never really prospered after that, and the population went down to, what I said now is about 36 at last count. I don't know about 2020 census, but there were very few people there, and I didn't see any black faces. But it was for several decades, probably until around the 1960s, it was pretty much an African-American town. There's some really interesting coal mining history in towns, and I'm hoping to show you those in the next few weeks. Hopefully it won't take as long to get it together as it did this time. Enjoy some scenes from around town. Thank you for watching. I've got some more spooky places to show you, so subscribe below.